episode 241 of the Daily Fantasy Edge. My name is Adam Levitan. I, of course, am one of the analysts here at DraftKings. I'm the father of Jerry, the most beautiful beast in the world. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. And we are coming off of a Big Dick Nick week. Yes, that's right. If you were sharp and you paid $4,700 for St. Nick, the Super Bowl MVP, in a nice home spot against the funneling Texans defense, you likely profited. If you were a stone donkey like me, you paid $4K for Taylor Heinickes, and you also somehow just got 11 points from Alshon Jeffrey, even though BDN went for 36 points. Seriously though, I thought it was an interesting week because we finally had the pay down at quarterback construction viable on DraftKings. You know, whereas most weeks, every quote-unquote in-play quarterback is within like 800 of one another. This time, you could have made a case for Ben Roethlisberger up at 6,700, or you also could have made a case for Taylor Heinicke at 4K. You know, typically in these kind of situations, when we have that big of a gap, I think paying down is right. You know, I mean, Taylor Heinicke basically broke his arm, you know, missed time in the locker room, came back, was playing with one limb, like dangling from his shoulder, and he still attempted 53 passes. You know, still had 15 DraftKings points at 4K. You know, Nick Foles got 49 attempts up there at 4,700. So whereas at running back and wide receiver, it's typically hard to get similar volume at a cheaper cost, at quarterback, we can sometimes get even more volume. You know, it ended up not really mattering in the end for me because my team was just not good enough. But when Taylor Heinicke got hurt and went to the locker room, you know, I couldn't help but think of the Josh McCown, the Josh McGod situation from a few years ago. For those guys who don't remember, it was week 3 of the 2016 season. And it was really kind of similar. Like McCown was starting for the Browns in a really good matchup at home and at a really cheap cost. And the dude literally like went to the locker room and the test revealed that he had broken his collarbone. And much like Heinicke, I mean, Heinicke had like 9 DraftKings points in the first few series. I mean, McCown was smashing. He had like 14 DraftKings points in the first half or something. Goes to the locker room. Tests show that he broke his collarbone. Comes back out with a broken collarbone and finishes the game. True hero. Similar to Heinicke. I mean, Heinicke went for an MRI Monday. We'll see what the results say, but it looked like he was playing with broken forearm or something. Something was going on there. Something crazy. Love that dude. Now I love Heinicke. I love McGod. I love them both now. Both will always have a place in my heart. I wanted to touch on the Robbie Anderson situation and also the $1,500 buy-in main event that just went down on DraftKings in week 16. First of all, it was very, very obvious that Robbie was one of the best sub 5K wide receiver plays we've had all year. The kind of routes that he runs, his athletic ability, you know, his alpha wide receiver 1 target share, the matchup, the way Sam Darnold is playing, the game environment. I mean, just a total home run, right? Like, and not rocket science at all at 4,500. Like, everyone knew it. 72% owned in the $25 single entry double up. And I'm sure it was way, way, way higher in the multi-entry double ups. You know, just a total layup play. Now, where it gets interesting for me, you know, and maybe one of the reasons where my record is so bad when I enter 1 to 3 lineups in a GPP, you know, I had Robbie Anderson projected around 30% in the small milli maker, in the $15 milli maker, and I thought he would be way higher in the 1,500. And turned out I was close. He was 36% in the small milli maker and 40% in the 1,500. So I decided to put 2 entries in the 1,500, and the first decision I had to make was whether I'd play Robbie on one or both or none. I don't think playing any wide receiver at 40% ownership is right in a tournament with almost 4,000 entries. I really don't. And maybe I'm wrong. Honestly, like this Robbie thing is making me question it. Maybe I'm wrong. But I really don't think it can be right if you're trying to get first place. Like, we don't gain anything when he plays well, right? Like, how many of you had Robbie Anderson on your team, you still didn't cash, or you still min cashed or whatever? You know, he needs an epic game, like a must-have him to win game in order to make it right to play him at 40%. And that's difficult to do. Of course, that's what he had, right? He had 32 DraftKings points at 4,500. But I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, like I said, I mean, my record is so bad. I'm okay when I enter like 20 teams into a mid-stakes GPP. When I put 1 to 3 in something mid-stakes or higher stakes, I mean, I'm just so bad. And I always like rationalize these things by saying, well, I have so much out there in cash. Obviously I had Robbie in cash, so it's kind of a hedge, right? Like, it's okay I didn't have him on either of my 1,500 teams because I had 100% Robbie in cash everywhere, every slate, everything. But then I end up without, my favorite plays in these tournaments, and that's what always happens. And, it's just the worst feeling. So I don't know, man. Maybe I should have thought about the Robbie play differently. I talked about on the 3-man pod how the Jets-Packers game had a chance to be so good, like so many good plays. Eli McGuire, Jamal Williams, Devontae Adams, MVS, ESB, Chris Herndon. So Robbie as part of a game stack, then I play him, right? Because, like, you almost have to have it. There's no way in that scenario the game shoots out without Robbie going off. His target share is just way too high. So, I have some regrets about the way I handled the 1,500s. One of my lineups had Kamara, Eli McGuire, Devontae Adams, T.Y. Hilton, Robert Woods, not even close to cashing, so it's another day in the life. It's easy to chalk it up to say, GPPs are #hard, and that's true. But I clearly need to start thinking about them differently, particularly when I only enter a couple. Anyway, speaking of not cashing for me, the 4-man this week went to Al, who did the sharp thing, went Big Dick Nick at quarterback, also saved money at a running back spot with Eli McGuire. In hindsight, I think Zeke, Chubb, and one of McGuire or Jamal Williams would have made more sense for what I wanted to do than what I ended up doing, which I'll talk about in a second. But anyway, Al used that savings to get up to Michael Thomas, which made a big difference. I mean, Michael Thomas just went off late, and he was going to have another kind of pedestrian game, and then just went nuts late, finished with 30.9 DraftKings points. Also had Dallas D. I thought Dallas D and Patriots D were so clearly the best plays considering price. And Dallas D specifically was awesome. I mean, Patriots D was awesome, but Dallas D was certainly strong. So many dropbacks for Jameis, and he is so turnover prone. This Dallas team, good defense, talented defense, highly motivated at home, can generate pressure with their front four. So congrats to Al. Nice team there. Peter, shout out to Peter. Finally out of the basement. I mean, somehow he didn't play Robbie Anderson and got away with it. I don't know what he was thinking. Pretty crazy, but he didn't play Robbie Anderson, and this 4-man got away with it because he played Ertz. He also had Foles, and he also played Chris Hogan. Took an airball with Chris Hogan, but used all these savings to get to both Michael Thomas and Bob Woods. So 188 points. I'm sure he booked a nice win. Congrats to him on getting out of the basement. The listener, Coach Fantasy, came in third. He went with Kalen Ballage with Chubb and Zeke. And, it was difficult to overcome that running back trio. He even got a big game from Ben Roethlisberger, but not enough for Coach Fantasy, who came in third. Of course, what Coach Fantasy did was still more than enough to beat me. Pretty tilted about my team and kind of the week as a whole. My worst week of the season, when I had around the most action I've had all year. Heinickes over Foles was probably a mistake given their pedigrees. Although I do think Heinickes was going to absolutely crush. Like, if he didn't get hurt, he was like a lock for 20 plus points. Of course, Nick Foles went for like almost 40, but nevertheless, that's like pretty tough to project. But anyways, like, the quarterback situation doesn't bother me as much as what I did at running back. I jammed Chubb, Saquon, and Zeke. It just left me so empty at wide receiver. Which, is kind of the strategy I think has been right all year, which is prioritizing running back. But Eli McGuire and Jamal Williams were pretty strong, and so was Robert Woods. So, like, if I just am willing to go down from Saquon to McGuire or Jamal Williams, I easily could have gotten up from Alshon or Robert Foster. Foster's Australian for sex, obviously. I could have gotten up to Robert Woods from there. And I was really high on the Rams pass game in this spot. Talked about that in leverage. And I think it would have made sense to do so, particularly the spot that Barkley was in, which I'll talk about in a second. Anyways, updated standings now. Myself, 6 wins. Listeners, 5 wins. Al, 4 wins. Peter, 1 win. So through no doing of my own, I have clinched at least a share of the season-long title. Shout out to me, etc., etc. All right. The Week 16 Listener League was again 10,000 entries. It did not fill. Finished at 9,547 entries out of 10,000. So after eating about 1,500 in overlay in Week 15, the guys at DraftKings had to eat around 2,200 this time. Embarrassing. Still not sure how big it will be for the finale, but it will be up soon. Do not embarrass us by letting this thing overlay in the best week of the year, Week 17. You go to DK Playbook, you find the logo for this podcast, you go to the landing page, you find the link. It's really not that hard. You can also use Google to just find the landing page. It should be up soon, like I said. It'll be a $5 buy-in. It'll be a 3-entry max. I'm not sure quite how big it will be, but it'll be rake-free. It'll be optimal payout structure. In first place in the Week 16 Listener League was Born in the USA. And this was awesome because not only did Born in the USA win the Listener League for $3K, which is pretty nice, he won the $1,500 that I was just talking about for $1 million. $1 million to Born in the USA. So pretty cool. Not sure I know who Born in the USA is. I don't think he got in touch with us on Twitter. He was probably off celebrating with the hookers and the blow and everything, his $1 million win. But, shout out to him. The lineup was Nick Foles, 14%, Zach Ertz, 12%, Darren Sproles, 0.7%. Sproles never crossed my mind, and obviously not many other people's mind, to be honest. Obviously, we could expect a really pass-heavy approach, and when the Eagles go pass-heavy, yeah, Sproles is going to be involved. I did play Ertz on one of my 1,500 teams, thought he was really strong, and like such a good tight end matchup when you play the Texans, and you could easily see the pendulum swinging back to Ertz in terms of target share. He also played Zeke and Sony Michel, and you could make a pretty good case that Sony was set up similarly to Nick Chubb. Certainly a worse matchup and a little bit more competition for market share with Burkhead and White there, but both really explosive runners with serious touchdown equity and major 100-yard bonus equity. But, Sony was like 2K cheaper, 3K cheaper, and also way less owned. He also had Antonio Brown, 9%, Robert Woods, 13%, just the nuts. 248 points. Unreal. So congrats to Born in the USA. Hope you're enjoying your $1 million plus. Hopefully if you're still alive and partying and not partying and playing on DraftKings, we will see you in the Week 17 4-man. In second place was Keanu 0878. Obviously, Foles and Ertz also didn't bring it back either. Marlon Mack at 29%. I didn't think Marlon Mack was that strong of a play when you compared him to Eli and Jamal Williams because of pass game role. And you see the danger of a guy like Marlon Mack. Giants come out and play well, and Marlon Mack's role is kind of mitigated. They're throwing the ball to Hines a lot. But it worked out because he also had Jamal Williams and he also had Alvin Kamara. And then the key to this lineup for Keanu 0878 was Sterling Shepard at 2%. Obviously, Sterling Shepard showed a ceiling, which I've talked about. I didn't think he had the last few weeks. So I was proved wrong yet again. Antonio Brown, Robbie obviously had to have them. In third place was B. Willie 66. Very, very similar lineup construction. Foles, Ertz, Antonio Brown, Robert Woods, Robbie, Eli McGuire too. Basically had to have this construction to win. So congrats to B. Willie 66 on your third place finish. We will see everybody else in the Week 17 Listener League, the finale. Last chance. By the way, the winner of the Week 17 Listener League will get an invite to the Week 1 4-man of the 2019 season, which should be a lot of fun. All right. Now it is time for everyone's favorite portion of the program. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, only going to do a 6-pack of questions today. A Christmas edition, if you will, although there's not any Christmas-themed questions in here, I don't think. But I'm not sure how many people are listening or want to hear about team sex and everything during their Christmas break. So we're just going to do a 6-pack today. Question 1 comes from the DFS Goat. He says, thoughts on sneaking snacks into movie theaters? This is actually a tough one for me. My first instinct is, let's not break the rules here, right? Like, let's not be a poor. If we can afford to go to the movie, then we don't have to sneak in food. You know what I mean? But then I started to think about it. And I mean, what goes on at the movie theater is absurd. I actually haven't been to a movie theater in probably like 5 years, maybe more. But from what I understand, it's like $10 for a soda. A box of M&Ms is $8, which is ridiculous, obviously. Like, so if they are going to be super greedy and charge 9,000% markups on their snacks, then I'm cool with sneaking it in, screw them. I do think, while we're talking about movie theaters, that they're probably in trouble, relatively speaking, to where they were. When I was a kid, I mean, that was a big deal. It was like a big thing to do, to go to the movies. There was no such thing as DVDs and big screen TVs. Like, big screen TVs weren't affordable. Like, no one had them. So going to the movies was an awesome, unique kind of experience. Now everyone has these sick TVs and the sound systems and the DVDs. It's just so much easier and more comfortable to watch a movie at home, and the quality is not that much worse. I have seen recently, my dad loves to go to the movies. He's told me about these theaters that have like reclining chairs that are like, like lazy boy chairs, drinking food service. I think that's what they need to compete. But yeah, not charging 9x markup on your snacks, would probably be a good step in the right direction too. Question 2 comes from Pablo Knows. He says, I have a buddy who is voluntarily doing a fasting diet. He doesn't eat between 9 p.m. and 1 p.m. the following day. Need your take on said diet and whether this is one of the most first world creations you've ever heard. Yeah, it does sound crazy, but I also know a lot of people that are doing it with success. The Mans, our own good friend of the show, Pete Manzanelli, swears by this diet. I actually don't know the exact science behind it, but it makes sense to me that if your body isn't constantly spending time breaking down food, it can actually spend that time burning fat or whatever, excess stuff that you don't need. So I'm definitely up for trying it. I actually don't think it'd be that hard for me to do it, at least an 8-hour version. When I'm busy, eating tends to just get in the way for me. So if I only ate between noon and 8 p.m. every day, I think I could do that pretty easily and probably see some immediate benefits too, I would guess. The bigger problem for me is what I would eat in those 8 hours. Like, I'm not sure you see any benefits if you just eat like crap in those 8 hours. And I'm not sure that this particular diet is exactly what I need, because I so desperately need to cut down or reduce my beige carbs, my sugars, etc. As for Pablo's point about first world creation, I mean, yeah, of course, like, it doesn't feel good to think about what's going on in other places around the world and compare it to what we have. We take dumps in clean water. Other people have no access to drinking water. We're purposely not eating for 15 to 20 hours a day. Millions of other people would give anything for just like a small piece of food. It's brutal. We ran so hot just to be born into these circumstances versus other people around the world. So yeah, the stuff I talked about last week with the Chipotle brothers, the stuff I talked about with Dink in episode 206. Actually, I know there's a campaign out there, and if you guys are interested, you should look into it. There's a whole list of NFL players who were probably on fantasy teams this year. If they helped you win money, consider donating to a charity they support. Yeah, and why not? For the write-offs anyways. I mean, if you're hashtag how rich, December 24th, should be looking for write-offs anyways. Better off giving it to charity than the government, most likely. All right. Question 3 comes from Viddy Smalls. He says, have you ever thought about putting together a glossary for the DFS Edge? GTO, nut low, etc. might be confusing to the new listener. Yes, I actually have thought about this. I haven't had the time to get around to doing it, but I want to. Maybe after the season I will. I think it'd be funny, number one, and a good resource, a funny resource. I think I need your guys' help, though. Tweet at me with the words or phrases you think should be in the glossary, and I'll get to it this offseason. Like, for example, some ones off the top of my head on top of what Viddy Smalls said. He said GTO and nut low. You could even do Bible narrative, ADOP, shower narrative, sick fish, stone minimum, punting, Reggie Robying, etc., etc. So yeah, tweet those at me, and I'll just put down a list of them for now, and then I'll go back and write up some definitions in the offseason. Question 4 comes from Soccer Junkie. He says, how many DFS pods do you tend to listen to on a weekly basis that you're not on as a host or contributor? Actually, just one. I listened to Gregg Cosell with John Hansen on Thursdays, and not really for any fantasy advice, really. It's more just to hear Cosell's takes on players and schemes from like a true film watching expert. But yeah, I mean, I try not to get flooded with info. I do obviously a lot of research on my own, and then I like to read Jam to Win's article. I talk to JM on our show on Fridays. I read Evan, obviously Silva's column on Roto-World, and that's pretty much it for outside articles or podcasts. You know, I think if you have the time to try to figure things out for yourself, it's always going to be better to do it that way. At least when I lose, I'm like, I have no one to blame but myself. Like, that feels right to me. And that's also another reason why I don't like, selling pieces or playing for somebody else or whatever, I want to only blame myself. Like, I want it all on me, win or lose. That said, I know not everyone has the time to like figure everything out for themselves. And I totally get that. And that's where, the pods and the articles, et cetera, come in. All right. That is going to do it for another edition of the solo pod. A Christmas edition, if you will. Big Merry Christmas to everyone. We are on a normal schedule this week, so we will be back Thursday night for the 3-man game-by-game breakdown with Al and Pete. We'll be breaking down my favorite slate of the year annually, Week 17, 16-game slate. Just a ton of information-based slate, which are, to me, the best slates. And also a lot of guys that second and third stringers come into play, which is always fun as well to try to see how these guys do on a main stage. So for Jerry, for producer Luke, for Big Dick Nick, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody. We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.